Good afternoon. Nathaniel, maybe I'll start with you. How have you been using circles in your teaching practice?
I've primarily been using circles in my teaching practice as a way for students to understand each other better and to understand some of the inner workings and just some of the student lives that we don't often acknowledge or bring up in the classroom. That could be how they're really feeling about a certain event or stuff that's going on at home. I do like a lot of check-ins in that way. Yeah, that's been primarily how I've been using it. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, community building.
Community building, yeah, there you go. And just transparency, and just to like, the biggest thing for me is the, oh, hey, I'm that too, right? So that we're not just this isolated individual that keeps our inner feelings and thoughts and concerns tight to ourselves because something might be wrong with us, right? It's a way to like open that up a little bit and share, and by sharing that, we begin to see it's like, oh, hey, it's June, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed too, right?
I think with the circles that I've used is if you have everybody who has a chance to have the floor and you're all on the same level, it allows kids who will pass the first 2 times, maybe even the 3rd time. By the 4th round, usually most students are engaging and sharing things they wouldn't in a classroom setting, right? They'll just fly under the radar. But in a circle, I think that it's more of a safe space.
Yeah, I mostly use circles in my class, well, in a few ways. Our Connect in the morning is often a circle, and we will usually just do a check-in, very similar. Community building, it might even just be as simple as we have a talking stick and we pass around, how are you feeling? Just even if it's just one word, it kind of brings us all together to connect, which is the purpose of it, to start our day. And then I meet in circles with them a lot on Forest Friday when I'm up in the forest, and we sing songs in a circle, and we learn about things in a circle. We share what we've noticed or observed in circles. So there's a lot of times up there, especially, that we meet in circles. More so even than the classroom, which is something to think about, for sure. I don't know why that happens, but it does. It's a really nice way, like you guys have already touched on, to connect, and everybody gets to be heard, everybody gets to be seen, and just that kind of coming together. All voices matter here.
I think that idea of being able to pass too is important.
Yeah.
You know, and I really have, like, my students, I was noticing in the beginning that they would just pass right away without thinking. Pass, right? And then I had the practice of just like sitting with a feather, asking yourself that question, finding a response, and you don't have to share that response, but you've just been present with it.
I love that.
Right?
That's great.
And then passing the feather on, just to have that mindful moment.
Just to think of it, and if you're not willing to share, I love that.
That's
Just
okay.
to think of it.
Yeah, you're still present, you're still part of the circle, you know, and it just kind of, it brings people together. And I agree with you, like outside of the classroom, circles occur naturally.
Right.
In the classroom, there's just so much stuff. Like, I would love to have circles way more often. And maybe with flex seating next year, that'll happen.
Yeah.
But it's just, I find with like desks and how many kids there are, it's just, we could circle up around the outside of the classroom, but it just doesn't feel the same.
I've had luck with bringing circles into beadwork when I've had beading. We're doing our Métis beadwork, and we try to always get the kids in a circle. And it's tough with all the desks, but we make it work. We make it work with the teacher's desk, and I've had guests participate, and they'll join in at a seat with students. And then, you know, once everyone's settled and everyone has their beading, it doesn't take as long as you always think it does, because you're like, oh, it's gonna take forever to set everything up. But once everyone's in a circle, we've gone around with just really easy topics, like, do you prefer chocolate or vanilla? And even just that one thing, those kids who would pass are like, well, it's just chocolate or vanilla. And then they would answer, and you get kind of this feeling of like, oh, you have students who start to say, can I have the next topic? Can I, you know, and then your half an hour goes so fast.
Can we do it again?
Exactly, yes. They want the circle. They want to be that community and do that activity in the circle.
To learn about each other and to share.
Their preferences, one of the resources I've used was from an Indigenous group of youth that created cards that have talking starters on them. So I would have a student go through the deck and pick a conversation starter. And one of them was, I don't support violence in my community. And so we talked about that, and everybody got a chance to think about it. And then we went around the circle and everybody got to talk about it. And by the fourth round, we had students talking about things that were very personal, and there was a lot more support. We felt a greater sense of community and support with our group because of these hard topics that the kids are picking. So I also like it when the students are having choice for what they want to share.
So important too for them to know that it's a safe space, right? And you guys do that as you're setting it up, and as over time, right, then kids start to learn this is a safe space.
Yes.
I can share here. I can be a part of this.
What's said in circle stays in circle.
Yes.
Although I had to later add the caveat that unless it's life-threatening or endangering,
Yes.
and then we have to have a discussion about it.
Yes, with our grade 5s, or grade 5, 6 last year, I would say, of course, there are certain things I'm mandated as a teacher to report or to talk about with my principal if things come up. But if you ever want to share something in circle, or if you're worried, you can always share after one-on-one. And it's always been, I think, safe for them to know that we always talk about, don't gossip about what you hear in circle, because that's not appropriate. Right? Yeah, it helps.
Are there any other guidelines that you put on circles or anything else?
For my littles, I just make sure that they can see everybody else's face. Because sometimes they'll circle up, but it's like someone's just a bit out. So it'll be like, okay, can everyone check in? Look, can you see everybody? And they'll be like, oh, we can't see Kyler. And so we'll all go, let's make room. And then we always make it before we start that everyone can see everybody else's face. And just talking about, because they're grade 1, just that respectful listening piece, how it feels when you feel like you're being heard, and then how can we make sure that everybody gets that really good feeling of being heard, right?
I love that.
There's focus. That's the whole thing in grade 1.
Well,
Yes.
grade 6.
Every year.
That's so important.
Yeah.
That active listening and that respectful listening, and I have it so that the only person that speaks is the person holding the feather. I also have it too where you don't engage with what somebody else shared, right? So you can't reply directly to their share. You can speak to your own experiences or feelings around what they shared, but you're not, hey, actually, when I did this happened.
Yes.
So it's less about having a conversation and more just like sharing experiences.
That's one of the rules that I think we had as the students had a ground rule, is they didn't want to hear a story or a connection to everybody's sharing. They wanted to hear something original, something from your own heart. And then that way our storytellers, who would often tell a lot of stories, they would have to think about what they were going to share that wasn't always, they couldn't always have the floor. They had to wait their turn, and everyone had a turn, right? And I think that's why we'd go around multiple times too, because kids would know, I'm going to have another chance, right?
I didn't know about the 4 times around. I primarily learned about sitting in circle by sitting in circle and ceremony, and usually the groups are so large, we go around once, right? Maybe twice if there's, somebody was missed.
Yeah, it was never a rule. We would just be, when Miss Michelle was helping me do circles, she would say, let's go around again. And it usually ended up being 4, at least 3, but
I like that.
We would go, she would go around again. And we'd go around again, and you'd hear such great other connections, other deeper thinking ideas. And so you would end up really getting to know your kids on a deeper level, because that first round was very surface. They're testing the waters. Is this a safe place? And I also said no put downs, right? If someone shares something and you don't agree with their beliefs or with what they've shared, or you think what they shared silly, I don't want to hear anybody judging anyone. This is a safe place to share what your feelings are. one should feel like they're being judged or put down for what they're sharing, right?
Because that just shuts them down.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's just like-
totally. It'll shut everyone else down too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, defeats the point of the circle.
Yeah.
Fun.
Have you got any resources that you have intentionally brought into your circle teachings?
I think the cards that Miss Michelle had gifted the school, they live in my room. She took them, so they might be in someone else's room right now, but they were created by a group of Indigenous youth, which were really powerful because there was all different topics. So I've brought the cards out, and then the Métis beadwork is like a resource that lends itself really well to circles because they're focusing on being patient and then learning from each other, right? So that's more of an intermediate thing, but
So, and Miss Michelle herself,
yes,
Yes.
right?
has been a great
yeah.
resource,
Yeah.
right?
It's been a fantastic resource.
Yes.
Very much so. Especially, I really like the simple intro, just the how are you feeling, or the spaghetti or pizza,
Yes.
you know, and it's that icebreaker, the circle icebreakers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've really appreciated her bringing that into the classroom.
Yeah.
And we have like gratitude cards. It's a similar thing. I love what you've got.
Yeah.
That sounds fantastic. Mine is just, the little gratitude cards. But we often do like a gratitude circle. And it's, again, a similar type thing. And it might be just as simple as we start with, one thing you're grateful for when we're talking about that. But the gratitude cards just take it a little bit deeper. So instead of they just ask you to think about things in a different way, or to narrow it in, just to kind of get kids to think outside just what we're grateful for. So once we've done a lot of that, I might pull those out and
Those are
we'll try
lovely,
those. Yeah,
though,
they are.
because even for grade 5, sometimes kids forget what they're grateful for. And when we've gone around and heard, because we've done a beading circle where one of the topics was, what are you grateful for? And there's kids saying, my family, my friends, and you start to hear, and the feeling in the room just feels grounded. It feels brought back in, and they have a lot more empathy when they hear what each other's grateful for, because there's kids that are struggling, right? So I love that. The cards that are from the youth almost feel upper elementary. Some of the topics revolve around violence and missing Indigenous women and girls. And so when you have a topic that's really heavy for an older group, I would bring those cards out after we've been doing circles for most of the year. And then when you get into those kids can feel safe to pick a topic that's really hard, right? The gratitude circles are amazing. I love that.
It's a great way to kind of start.
Yeah.
There's so many times where you can just do a quick circle out. It's either like a quick share, quick check-in. How are you feeling? Gratitude, right? They can be used quickly. But I love hearing how you guys are going way deeper with your circles at that intermediate level. It's very inspiring.
It's pretty magical.
Yeah.
Especially last year, I had a group that had a lot of trauma, and like past just COVID trauma, but like just a lot of wonderful weirdos, that really felt marginalized and have had some difficulties in their lives. And it just took one kid to be brave and to speak about his experience getting bullied, and then how he would express that in his own life and where he would take that. And then we had those little sparks coming up of like, oh, I do something similar,
Yeah.
right? And then it breaks through this stigma of like, oh, there's something wrong with me, right? To like, hey, we all have difficulty, we all have things, and the more we share, the more we can come together in community. We like share each other's load,
Yeah.
and it becomes, instead of this big heavy burden we have to carry around and be ashamed of, it's like, hey, we can rest in each other.
They're not alone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, which is huge.
That's so beautiful.
Huge. Yeah. And it's been, very transformative with some of these kids that really step forward into that process. And I mean, like last year I used it quite a bit, and we had kids that would not share for many circles, and then near the end they started to like find their voice, and it's just like, oh, that's so touching, so endearing to have that.
Passively watching everyone else engage, and then when they're feeling ready, it's their turn to step in. And I feel like, especially if you're doing it throughout the year and it's a continued practice,
Feel safe.
those kids that are just not ready yet to engage that way, by the end of the year, the chances are, that they're gonna get involved.
And so where do you see circle teachings going in your career?
I'm gonna try what they're doing. Bam, that's some serious info.
I love your idea of taking them up to the park. And I think that a lot of times as an educator, I get a little nervous taking them away. But I love the idea of just naturally getting into that space and then having nature just be your circle. And then how you're just spending all those days throughout the whole year, getting them outside, bringing them into circle. Because like when you're outside, it just naturally lends itself.
Happens. Like you, for some reason, when you're outside, in this setup, it is so like familiar for them to sit there, me to sit in the chair, and this is how we're oriented.
Yeah.
And that never happens out there. Like it's so rare that we'd be like, okay, and it's like I'm here and they're sitting here.
Yeah.
We just naturally, you just kind of, you're in that circle and it makes sense out there somehow.
And I love the teachings of the circle, that there's no beginning, no end.
Yes.
Right? And that we're all in the same level.
That's important for them too, that I think that I'm part of that I'm not on the chair, or that I'm not higher, but that I'm in that circle at the same level. Like you said, no beginning, no end. And whoever's speaking is who we are looking at. It's not just me up there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then the idea too that we're all each other's teachers in the circle, right? Even me, I'm learning from all of you while we're in this circle, right? You all have stuff to teach me, right? So
they love that. Especially these little ones, they're just like, we're gonna teach her. They're so used to that.
Yes.
Right? That hierarchy, which is colonialism, right?
Yeah. Also, like, I really enjoy using circles as a debrief for challenging moments or like really like tricky things. Like we had our classroom broken into last year and like thrashed, like destroyed, paint everywhere, classroom library on the floor. It was like, whoa, it was hard. And our class, just with all the community building we've been doing and the circle work, that we knew we could rely on each other, then instead of like exiting our classroom and going somewhere else, right, to the library for a week until things get cleaned up, we decided to like go in and reclaim the classroom. But we did that after we talked about it and in circle. And that we went around and everybody had a chance to like really speak from the heart how it makes you feel. You know, so we're addressing these emotions, we're addressing the effect and impact it has on us, right? And then what do we want to do moving forward as a group? You know, so we're all moving together rather than, okay, this is what we're doing now. You know, and it made a huge difference. We were able to like reclaim that classroom with pride, and if anything, it just built up that community even further. And I really attribute sitting in circle to some of that strength, you know, that came through.
I love that you used it as a way to reclaim that space after that trauma, because I think that would have healed a lot of kids' emotional stress over what if this happens again, and you know, this is our safe place, right? Yeah, I like that.
And those were all concerns brought up in the circle, you know, and it was just by talking about it, because when we keep things inside, right, it just stagnates and festers.
And it lets them know that they're not alone in those feelings. When we're in a circle and we share something and other kids are like, oh, me too. Like you know, they get a chance to see that they're not alone in that fear or in that moment where they're unsure about life. And I find that a circle really brings out that feeling of community, right?
We had one trip up to the forest and it was really just not like this crew. They're really empathetic, supportive of each other, team, like they're really a team. And they were just after each other and like, he's in front of me and he touched me and she's doing this, and they were just this all day long. And I kind of called them, I'm like, what's going on today? Like this energy is so different. Do you guys feel this energy? And they're like, yeah. So when we got back, I was like, we're just gonna circle up. And we kind of shared how we were feeling because of this energy. And then I know this is quite directed compared to what you were doing, but I did have them, I go around and give a compliment to the person on the right of them. And this group can totally, they're just so kind. Just one compliment, and we're just gonna raise that energy back up. And I tell you, by the end of it, they were hugging each other. It brought them in. They were just looking at each other, hugging, pats on the back, I love you. And it just changed the energy so much. I was almost in tears.
Wow.
I was like, oh, good, we're together again, guys, we did it. And they still bring it up. Like, they're still like, remember that the energy is getting negative, we can change this to a positive, and they just start changing their language. And complimenting each other and filling buckets, and
I love that.
I'm like, okay, that was good. That was all we needed to do. Just, you know.
And that's so funny because with our support of Miss Michelle, she actually did that on a few of our circles where we didn't know what to talk about, and she was like, I'm feeling that there's a lot of issues happening between kids and just a lot of angst, and she was like, I want you to compliment the person across from you or next to you. She did it to me once. She was like, I want you to tell your teacher what you really like about her. And I was like, oh my gosh.
That filled your bucket.
And some of the comments were really, like, I got emotional because they just,
I know.
you feel run down sometimes. And I was like, why did you do that? And she's like, you needed it. So
That's so
sometimes the
sweet.
circle just build that community in a different way. And yeah, giving each other a compliment. Kids are complimenting each other. And, you know, I was worried, oh no, what are they going to say? And none of them, they did awesome.
Yeah.
Right? And then after there's that feeling.
And they were
like,
just,
oh,
it just built them up so
Yeah.
much. I was like tearing up one of my little, like, more challenging little dudes. He was the one to give me a compliment. He's like, I love how well you take care of us and your kids, and we feel so loved.
Oh, wow.
So then I went like this, and I'm like, thanks, buddy. And then tearing up, I gave him a hug, and then we were all just,
Oh.
that's
Yeah.
gonna go with me for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah, super sweet.
Aw. Is there anything else that you'd like to say about circle pedagogies or circle practice?
I feel like there's so much to learn still.
Yes.
You know, I feel like I'm in my infancy in doing this, and yeah, I look forward to working with that more in the future, and just the idea of like, right, outside is where it happens naturally. So, you know, it feels like the park is a long ways away, but it's really only a 15-minute walk,
Yeah.
right? So it's possible to go up there for like the whole day.
It's good.
You know,
Yeah.
just watch it,
Yeah,
and just being
right.
able to take that outside more and to just do that more.
I'm like the opposite, because I am doing it outside. I'm like, how could I do it more inside? Why is it happening so nicely out there? I see how it works. It's very natural. And why does it feel like more forced, or that it has to be planned in here? And how could there be more
I think
circle happening?
for me, I think it's like I fake it till I make it. Because every time I do something new, I'm like, oh, this is gonna work. And I think last year I was starting to do circles a lot more. And this year I just had this reservation. So even just talking about it now makes me like, let's do more circles.
We can do it,
Right?
Circle team.
Just, okay, everybody in a circle. Because once the kids get into that routine of the expectations of being in a circle and the ground rules, and then when you don't have to harp on it anymore, it just happens so naturally. And the kids really thrive when you get into a circle and they all know that their voice is going to be heard, right? And I'm going to have to do that, where it's like, I want you to think about your answer. Even if you can't share it, I want you to still think about your answer before you pass.
Just sitting with it.
Right? Yeah. And then having something to pass. I think I never had anything to pass. And I think that would lend it. I mean, did you find it more successful having a feather to pass?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have an extra. I'd like to gift you a feather.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's so kind. Thank you.
Good to be.
There you go.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.